Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr here today for Mama Elephant with a Family Time Display a Card. This features new stamps and dies from the February 2020 release, as well as previously released stamped images to kind of round out the whole scene. One of my very favorite things to do is to mix and match new and old together to kind of breathe new life into stamps and dies and other product that you might already have on hand. So we're going to start by stamping the background for our display a card, and then we're going to put it together. Originally, I thought I was going to put my display a card on a card base. The display a card does measure A2 size, so it's going to be 4¼ by 5½ inches. However, I did ultimately decide to just make my card the display where you can write your sentiment or your greeting to the recipient on the back of the card instead of actually having it open. But there is that option. If you want to put your display on a card front, you can very easily do that. So I am stamping my background. I wanted my sky to have some interest to it. So this is the My Favorite Things Scattered Hearts background that I have stamped with Simon Says Stamp Surf Blue ink on this Hero Hues Mist cardstock. And then we're going to layer another background stamp over this, one you've probably seen me use many times lately because I love it. It is the Simon Says Stamp You Are background, which is a really awesome subtle text background that I'm stamping with white pigment ink over the hearts. So we are just layering those background images one on another. This is going to serve as the background of our scene. Then I have used the display a card, and I have die cut 2 of these panels from that Hero Hues Mist cardstock. You need one for the front and one for the back, and then we're simply going to use a bone folder and score these to build our display. And what is awesome is this is going to stand up on its own. And I think what I love most about this is it is A2 sized. This is regular or standard card sized. So you're basically building a scene that is going to fit in a standard envelope, and it just is phenomenal. So we're gonna put these together and then build the scene inside. There is also this great little landscape die that I have die cut from Hero Hues Meadow cardstock. And there are some trees and then things, those little scallopy pieces that can be used as clouds or the tops of the trees. So you're getting all of that in this display a card set. Plus you can use other dies that you have from Mama Elephant in this to build all kinds of cute scenes. I'm going to be making trees and using 3 of these borders to build my scene card. I'm going to adhere my 2 panels together only on one side to start with. I want to leave my display a card open to build the scene. It's so much easier, I feel, to put it all together when it's flat like this. So we're just going to adhere them together on one side, and then you can see you just kind of pinch it in there, and there's how the display a card works. You can also completely leave a backing off of this if you want to and have it be completely see-through. I am adding some ink to the edges of my die cuts for a little added depth and dimension. This is some Simon Says Stamp Green Leaf ink on the Hero Hues Meadow cardstock, and it's going to deepen and darken that edge. I will be using this ink on all 3 of my borders. 2 of the borders, I'm going to leave those tabs on that have the score lines from the die, and they will be adhered inside the display a card. You can see that they can just fit in where we have scored and folded before. And one of them I'm going to trim the tabs off and layer across the bottom front of my display a card to finish off the scene. Inside my card, I am going to adhere one of the borders up a little ways for depth and dimension. The border that will go on the front of our display a card is going to be adhered directly along the bottom edge. So I want my others to be up a little higher so that you can see that when it's standing up. Now I think I actually adhered this wrong. In fact, I know I adhered this first one wrong, so I will need to fix that. You'll see that a little bit later in the video as I go to adhere the other side of the display a card. It's another great reason to not adhere your display a card on both sides, because you can open up that one side and really fix anything that you need to fix. So let's go ahead and ink up our other border, score the sides, do all the things here to get all the components we need. I did my die cutting and inking first. We will also be stamping the sentiment from the brand new Family Time stamp set. Probably my favorite stamp set from the February release. And we're going to stamp that on the front border that's going to go along the bottom edge of the front of our card. I decided to use the I Love You More Than You'll Ever Know sentiment. We will be stamping that with a clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white embossing powder. There I've just adhered the two borders inside my display a card. And I'm going to play around with the trees just to get an idea of how many I want. I knew I wanted multiple because I want them to each be on different layers so that you're kind of seeing some depth and dimension within the scene. And then that bear holding the little baby bear up in the sky or holding it up in its arms, you know, up above its head, that's going to be kind of our focal point. And then I went through my Mama Elephant collection looking for more bear images or other kinds of images that I thought would work with the Family Time image. And that's going to include this cute little bear from the Big News stamp set that holds a sign, which we can add additional sentiment to. That's going to include the birds from the Tea with Friends stamp set, and some flowers and mushrooms and other kinds of nature images from Dandelion Wishes. So definitely shop what you have and see if other images from sets you already own will work with new stamp sets, new dies, to really build a full scene. You will see as I am working on building this scene, I originally used almost everything that you see in the finished card, but I went in and added the dandelion images because I felt like there was something missing. When you're building a dimensional interactive kind of pop-up like this, I find that the more you can add, the more interesting that pop-up can be. Here's that border that I die cut, or I trimmed the edges off so that I could layer it across the bottom front of the card. Now I'm just going to simply figure out where I want to put my sentiment. And I really like it over on the right. But I want to lay out the images I think I'm going to use so I have a really good idea. And I'm going to stamp and emboss that like I was mentioning with white embossing powder. I do use a powder tool to help keep the embossing powder only on the stamped greeting and hopefully not migrate anywhere else. And once that embossing powder has melted and cooled, I will take a dry rag and buff away that excess powder from the embossed area. I'm going to go ahead and add a little ink to this border as well now that I have it stamped and embossed. This will put some ink on what I have embossed, but I can take that same dry rag that I just used to get rid of the powder residue and buff away any excess ink that might be sitting on top of that embossed area so it's a nice bright white sentiment. Now I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on the sides and along the bottom edge only so that it just fits there along the bottom edge of the pop-up. With a pop-up, you need to be pretty conscious of where that adhesive goes so that it doesn't impede anything that is going on, so that it's still interactive. And then I'm just going to adhere this along that bottom edge. And you're starting to see the scene come together. It is really so fun, so cute. Same thing with the tops of the trees. I want to add ink to the top of those with the Simon Says Stamp Green Leaf dye ink and an ink blending brush. Gives them a little extra depth and dimension. On the die cut tree trunks from the Hero Hues chestnut cardstock, I'm going to use some dark chocolate ink to add some ink to those. And that really is most of the background scene building pieces. From here, we're going to need to stamp and color in the rest of the images we're going to use for building our scene. As I was working, I double checked often to kind of get a good idea of where everything was going to go. So I attached the top of the tree to the tree trunk, and I made a little bit of a mess there. And I'm using some tweezers, and I worked kind of in stages because I didn't want everything to be wet with glue at once. So because I had laid out my stamps and kind of had an idea of where everything was going to go, I am going to go ahead and adhere my trees. And this is where I discovered that that one border is not where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to have to remove that. Because see how it's bowing in? It's because it's not adhered the right way. I'm going to take a little undo adhesive remover. I know a lot of you have asked about that. I will link that in the supplies because it's a magical product that allows you to easily remove something with a tape runner adhesive anyway. It's not going to work with liquid adhesive and not ruin your project. So I have used it for years and years, and I don't use it very often, but when I have to, it sure comes in handy. So now that I have realized what way to adhere my border so that it's going to shut correctly, you can see me adhere it here. And unfortunately, I did remove both sides of my backing paper. I'm going to just take that one of those pieces and put it back here in a second. Because I want to leave this open, remember? And now I can go ahead and start adhering my pieces. You want to make sure everything stays within the parameters of the card, side to side, top to bottom, so that it does fit in a standard envelope. And then we've got our trees that we're just going to attach to different layers in our card. And remember, where the adhesive goes is super important because you don't want to glue the different layers together and have your card not be able to pop up and stand up. It is called a display a card for a reason. I do love that it can just kind of sit on a shelf or a ledge or whatever after you've sent it to a recipient, and I think that's just a really fun, cute little display. So I'm going to let my trees sit and completely dry, and I'm going to stamp images now from Family Time, which is the bear holding up the baby bear. I'm going to stamp the bear holding the sign. That is from the Big News Mama Elephant stamp set. The birds are from Tea with Friends. And then the mushroom and the dandelions, which I did not stamp right off the bat, but I will go back and stamp and color later, are all from Dandelion Wishes. I stamped these with a no-line coloring ink, and I'm going to color in my images with Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers, starting with my bear holding the baby up in the air. This is some dark brown, oatmeal, and pink haze, kind of just outlining the image with my darkest marker in most areas, and then blending out with the oatmeal. And I'm going to work kind of slow and just try to get as nice of a blend as possible. I am using Bristol Smooth cardstock to stamp and color my images. This cardstock is a game changer when working with zigs as they blend beautifully, as you can see. If you have tried the zigs and you have been disappointed, I highly recommend using Bristol Smooth cardstock. It makes all of the difference. I'm going to use a little pink haze for the cheek on the bear and the insides of the ears. And I kept the tail on my bear a little lighter. I don't really know why. I just thought it was kind of cute. I could darken it up maybe a little bit. The birds I'm going to color with cobalt blue, light blue, and pale yellow with a little bright yellow for the beaks. And then I'll go in with probably my deep brown or a mid brown for the legs on the birds. Any eye details, nose details, mouth detail, I will go back in with either a fine tip black pen or a black glaze pen. It really just depends on the image, and I will go back with that a little bit later and add in all of that detail. I'll zoom in a little closer as well, hopefully to see the coloring detail a little closer up. I know that no line coloring can be super hard to see when it's too far away. What's great about this ink is it really does stay visible and easy to see for a pretty long time. I know that I did come back to do the bear holding the sign the next day after I had started this card, and I had done the coloring, but it was really, usually if you do it all right away, you die cut the images, you go back in, you want to add the black detail for the face, you can still see it. It had faded by the next morning, which is awesome because then you're just left with the beautiful coloring. But I definitely had to grab my stamp set to see where I needed to draw in the nose and the eyes. The mushrooms are colored with deep red, which the deep red deepens and darkens it really, really nicely. I love this color combination for the mushroom. I really, really like that. And then the base of the mushrooms are going to be light brown and mustard with a little brown thrown in there as well in a couple of areas. And then greenery is going to be mid-green and olive green. And the mushrooms add that great pop of color to our card, that little touch of red. I know I mentioned this in quite a few videos, but I love a little touch of red somewhere on a card. I think it adds a great little pop of color, and so that's kind of where our little pop of color comes today, as well as like the little diaper that we're going to color on the baby bear. I haven't colored in the baby bear yet, but when we get back to that, I am going to use some pinks for that part of the image. But this mushroom image is awesome. I really like this one. And we're going to have one of our cute little birdies sitting on the top of this along the front part of the card. So next we are going to color in the bear holding the sign. The sign, I decided to make the sign look like a wood grain sign, so I want the bear to be a different color of brown so it's not just all the same color. For the sign itself, we're going to use mid-brown and beige. So that's a different color combination than what we used for the first bear. In fact, I used a couple of different colors for the bears, and then I used a different color combination for the sign. When using lots of neutrals, I try to do that just to add interest. And then for the bear, I actually wanted to start with a different color combination, which I'll come back to, but I'm going to end up using this color combination I'm using for the baby, which is brown and light brown. I decided too many different color changes wasn't really going to look great, and so I ultimately opted for that. I did use a little peach pink and sugared almond pink for the baby diaper, and I'm just adding in that face detail that I was talking about now. So I'm going to do that for my bears and my birds, and that makes their faces come to life. So now we'll color in our final bear, and this is where I thought I would use some lighter colors, and I even traced it out in a lighter color, and I really, really didn't like it. It's a little too greeny for me. And so I'm actually going to switch that back to the brown and light brown, something dark enough to cover that up where I don't have to restamp the whole image and recolor. These markers are super forgiving, water-based, and so they work really well to just kind of blend that all out and make it look awesome. Now this is the image where I lost that face detail. I think you can still kind of see it after I first color, but I ended up walking away and having to come back to this the next day, and I will go ahead and draw in that face after I've die cut the images. So I've die cut everything now with the coordinating dies, and that's Family Time, Tea with Friends, Big News, and Dandelion Wishes, and I'm ready to start adhering it. And I'm going to adhere all the different elements to different layers within the display a card. And sorry, my head is in the way. I needed to get that lined up. I'm using some craft tweezers to help hold that in place perfectly. And I want to add a sentiment to our sign from that Big News stamp set, which has tons and tons of sentiments, which are really awesome. I'm going to stamp that with a embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. And it's "You're all sorts of wonderful. I love you more than you'll ever know." I think those sentiments work fantastic together. A little black glaze pen. The nose and eyes on this image are a little more prominent, so I like the glaze pen for that. And then we've got loads of cute images to finish building our scene. So we've got our mushrooms there along the edge. I only put glue along that right edge, and the same for the bird standing on the mushroom. Our little bear holding the sign. We're going to have another little bird kind of down here pecking at the ground, one flying up above, so glued to the tree. And let's go ahead and I'm going to assemble the display a card now. Anything extra should be pretty easy to assemble. So I am adhering my borders first within the layers that they go in. Removing that backing paper, lining these up. I want them to be as straight as possible. So just double checking. Let's lay that down. Make sure it's in the right crease of our display a card. And then we'll put adhesive on that other tab for the other side of the display a card. And I'm using some whiter double-sided tape. I recommend a nice strong adhesive for this. Double-sided tape works really, really well. And then we're just going to pinch it all shut, fold it in, make sure that it is adhered really well. How cute is that? So much fun, you guys. These are really, really easy to make. I think especially as you make more of them, they get even easier. Next, I'm going to put adhesive around the border on the back of my display a card. I trimmed what I stamped earlier down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I just trimmed the front of the card base off, and I'm going to adhere my display a card directly to this so that the background is really fun and interesting. It has those little hearts, just really, really cute, and then the subtle text. I found it easier to take my background to the display a card to adhere that. And you can see when I flip it over, look how cute. Now, this is those yellow flowers I went ahead and added to finish it off. Those are from the Dandelion Wishes, just stamped, colored, just like before. I did want to grab a standard envelope and show you that it does fit inside a standard envelope. It is a little bit tighter fit. This is a lot of little layers here, some little folds, but you can get it inside. It does go in, it shuts. Look at that, so cute. And then you can pull it out. The recipient should be able to get it out of there very easily. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Mama Elephant Display a Card interactive card featuring new stamps and dies from the February 2020 release. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Mama Elephant stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.